Hello. Welcome to this episode of a Creative Approach podcast. I'm your host, Karen Poirier-Brody. I'm excited today to have as my guest Janaina Oliveira of with2worlds.org. Jenna uses digital art to tell her stories and teaches these skills online. Jenna loves to pass on her skills and believes in using an artistic expression of ideas for good mental health. I came back to the summer-like weather here in Sacramento, but there has been a change in the forecast, and it looks as if fall is here to stay. Our winter with 50 to 60 degree Fahrenheit weather will start in early December until mid-March, though we sometimes have warmer days during that time. Freezing temperatures occasionally occur at night, but snow is infrequent. Even though I spent my early life in Canada and enjoyed some snowy weather recently, I'm glad to be a California girl and get to drive to the snow. I like to ski, which can be a bit challenging with my arthritis and limitations. Short, well-groomed slopes and limited hours on skis mean I can handle some of the sport. I figured out that 4 trips to the resorts made a season's pass worthwhile and hope to get up to the mountains at least that many times this year. I'll likely take my husband or son to help with the equipment, though developments in shorter skis and light, less restrictive gear and clothing make things more possible than it would have been 10 years or so ago. A significant part of winter is holidays. They're fast approaching, and I'm planning for the season. The warmth and cheer of the decor make winter a lot more pleasant. I thought of using the word palatable here, because, of course, celebratory food is kind of joyful too. It's a great time to work on creative decorating schemes. Themed projects are often a great deal of fun. I'd love to have you share your ideas for the holiday season on our Creative Approach Facebook group page. Creative expression and food and decor, as well as storytelling, adds richness and meaning to our lives. I'm glad you're joining me today as I speak with Jenna about creativity in her life and her reflections on the topic of a creative approach. Hi. Welcome to this podcast today, and I'm really excited to have Janaina Oliveira today with me as my guest. And I've known Jana, not in person, but online for a while now. And Jana's a scrapbooker, which is how I know her. But she's a storyteller who has taken on more of an artsy style in her scrapbook pages. But the nice thing about Jana, in addition to some beautifully created works, is the fact that she really tries hard to communicate and teach people some of the skills in her storytelling. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. That's such nice words from you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I've been listening to the podcast, so it's very nice to be here.
Oh, well, we are happy to have you. And I was wondering if you wanted to expand a little bit about what it is that you actually do. Tell the listener.
Yes. So right now, I am, as Karen said, I am a digital scrapbooker, but I consider myself more a digital artist because I don't do just scrapbooks. I like to play with apps and all kinds of digital art. And I have my blog, and I now have my, classroom that I teach people. And I have, as Karen said, a unique style to my art. So that's what I like to do. I started actually as a paper scrapper back in the day. Not actually a paper scrapper, I was a card maker and a stamper. And I used to teach people how to do mini albums. I actually have a lot of old videos on my YouTube. I used to have live when the time people didn't know even what live was. I was on Ustream teaching people how to do a full scrapbook page. And things changed a lot from them.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how it changed and how more connected we are now. So,
yeah. And you don't just, tell your story and play with your art, but you create art for other people to use in their designs as well, right?
Yes, I am. I am a CT, a creative, teamwork. If people are not familiar, is that designers sometimes from, that do products, digital products, they have a team that, do pages for them to showcase their work, to showcase their product, or in the case of Get It Scrapped, to showcase the, design that they are talking about, the topic they are talking about. So I do that work as well. And I also write a column for scrapnews.com about digital art.
That's great. I think we should maybe
Yes.
talk about places that people could find you, and then we'll include those in the show
Yes.
notes. So
Yes.
you were, first of all, the online magazine on scrapbooking. Where would people find that?
I write a column for scrapnews.com blog.
So it's scrappingnews.com.
It's Scrapnews.
Scrappineers. Oh, for the
Yeah.
Scrappineers site. So
Yeah.
scrappineers.com.
Right.
And then you are on the team at Get It Scrapped.
Yes, I am at the team at Get It
So
Scrapped.
at getitscrapped.com or debbiehodge.com will take you there.
Right. And I am at the team for allscraps.com, which is a digital scrapbooking store. And I do videos there. So if you go to the blog, there is several videos of tutorials there to showcase the products at All Scraps.
And when you do your digital scrapbooking, most of us use programs, and I assume you use full Photoshop for your
Yes.
classes and to teach
Right.
people, which
Yes.
is great.
Yes. Nowadays, though, I do a combination. I do love Photoshop. I am a Photoshop, addicted to Photoshop. But
I think that's it. Yes.
I do combine. I do love, and if people, follow me on Instagram, they do know that I love to use my iPad and iPhone and all things with apps.
Yes.
And I do a lot of art. And what I do today, really, I combine a lot of that with Photoshop because, to tell the truth, I think apps today, and it makes your job so much easier, and your pages can be so much more artistic without you having to do all the steps that Photoshop does. Because Photoshop is awesome, but sometimes to create some kind of things, you have to go, to spend a good hour on it to have the effects that you want. So I do that in probably 30 seconds in an app. So
what are your favorite apps? I think is the next question.
So my favorite app is one called iColorama, and I do have some videos about iColorama, although I intend to do more. It's, to me, one of the best apps that nobody talks much about it. And I think the reason why nobody talks much about it can be a little overwhelming. I understand that. It's a little overwhelming. But it is a very powerful app. And also I like MetaBrush and Procreate, of course. But Procreate is more to do painting and things like that. But there are several steps. I actually have a blog post at my blog that is Guide to Apps to Use with Artistic Designs, Part 1. I'm trying to prepare Part 2. And there is a download that you can, download a PDF, and you have all the apps listed and what they do.
Oh, that's great. Now, how do we find your app? I mean, not app. How do we find your blog?
Yes, I'll post a direct link for you later, but my blog is with #2worlds.org.
Right. Okay.
And that is where you have, and if you go to tutorials on the categories on the side of the blog, you click blog first and then you're going to see all that. But I can send you also a straight link to that guide there.
That's great. Yeah. Well, we just want to make sure the listener can go and find all of this valuable information, because Jana is a good teacher and she takes time to make sure we understand the wonderful tools that are available to us. So those are, as you said, those are your 3 favorites then?
Yes. There is much more. This is another whole podcast. But in this guide, I have about 7 of, I think 7 of them or 6.
Oh, good.
It all depends on what you want. And I know people are going to say, well, it's just for the iPhone. No, I absolutely try to put things for Android as well. So there are apps that are for Android on that list. But, we do have to realize iPhone apps are the ones that have more artistic apps than Android.
Yeah, they're
So,
just more
and
developed. Yeah.
right. And I also have a group. And in my group, actually, I posted a Excel, not Excel, but a Google, doc that you can see actually all the apps and which ones are for Android. Every time I find an app, I put on that, doc, and people can check that. And yeah, because if you go to my blog, you're going to see that I have also a Facebook group, and I do extra videos there, and I talk about this thing. So but if you search on Facebook, it's number two again, always number two, towards digital education.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, we'll make sure that we include all of these links in the show notes, and the direct link to that PDF would be there too. So that's great. And because you are a very good educator, Jenna, and you really are concerned that people learn how to use these. And I know you're very willing to answer people's questions and prepare tutorials for them if there's something they don't understand. So that's really wonderful.
Yes, because I think sometimes what I see again, I'm talking about artsy style, right? Because I cannot talk about other styles other than the one that I like and I embrace it, because I fully embrace it, my style. And if you wanted to learn artsy the way that I like, to me, artsy doesn't mean just blending. Artsy to me means color. I love color, and my layouts and my digital art, I don't like they to look the same. So some people like to have a cohesive look. I don't.
This isn't just for scrapbookers. I mean, people can use this in their photographs if they want to do art style photography to put their photographs up, or to even post those photographs somewhere. But certainly for decor at home. And then if you want to do cards or other things, I mean, Jana's exactly. Really good at card making, because that's where her roots are. So you can use this in a lot of ways.
Yeah, not at all. I don't want people to look at this and think that if you're not a scrapbooker, this doesn't relate to you, because art can be transformed in many ways. We can do actually, digital art journal, art to just release your stress, your anxiety. If you have problems with depression, if you have a hard time sometimes, this can totally, I use this to replace, instead of journaling in a notebook or doing things like that, because, I did just psychology and I'm a firm believer that we have to use these things to get our mind. It's kind of a mindfulness, mindfulness approach, because I think when you're creating art, no matter what you're doing, you can really get yourself to that, your mind to be quiet for a moment. And that brings you a little bit of more peace. And you're going to feel, after whatever you are creating, better about your life. So I think that's the intent about it.
Yeah. And you mentioned I know you've been studying and going to school for a while now, and you got your degree, and that was was it in some type of counseling or in psychology in general? I don't remember now.
I did childhood psychology with special needs and minor in social work.
Ah, very good.
Yeah.
And so you kind of combine some of your creativity and art with your approaches to solving problems.
Yes, and actually in school, when I was taking psychotherapy, my teacher, he had a Flickr account, and he did all this and we talked about, digital art as a psych, approach to, as a treatment. And I was like, let me show you some stuff that I do. And he was actually surprised, but what he likes to do himself, he does these effects with his camera. He takes, he likes to take photos, and then he takes, reflection, or he takes pictures that are blurred and do this kind of effects. But it is a form of art.
Yes. So yes, you can use photography both by using things within the camera and then in the post-processing,
Right.
whether you use an
Exactly.
app or you use Photoshop, which is great.
Mhm.
And then, so right now, are you actually practicing what you've learned in a practice? Do you have a practice in psychology?
No, I don't have a practice. I intend to, I'm now starting to have one kind of certification that, if people are not in special needs, they don't know, but I want to take a certification of a technician on applied behavior because my research in school was about applied behavior, which is called ABA. And the reason why people wonder why she's taking on that different route is because my son is autistic, and my son, it is the reason why I went to school. It is the reason why I want to take that route. And I do want to have the certification in order for me. I wanted to start a website, a blog to help moms like me, but more in a teaching approach, the way that I do things with him and work. And I like video modeling. So I would like to teach parents how to do video modeling for their kids so they can learn social skills and other skills.
That's great. It's another creative thing. And another way, of course, Jana's telling us that she loves to teach, which is great.
I do love to teach. It's funny. I never went to that route in my profession. When I was younger, I actually was accounting. I worked in accounting because I did accounting technical school. So I never thought I had a creative bone in my body. And it was funny when I came to United States about almost 20 years now, a friend sent me this laminated thing with some stickers and things. And I said, oh my God, thank you so much. I just left Florida and we were, such good friends and we are missing each other. And I said, what is this that you sent me? And she said, this is a scrapbook.
So that's where it started.
I went to Google and then here's where I am now.
Well, you were mentioning something like you'd come to the United States. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your early life and how did you, and how you got into accounting and then how you got into this path. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I am originally from Brazil, from Rio de Janeiro. And in Brazil, I worked, I did kind of a community college for accounting. So and I married and came here because my husband came to do his PhD here. So my husband is a engineer, a software engineer, and researcher. And so that's how I end up here. And he did his PhD at Florida, at University of Florida. Go Gators. So that's how I started. Yeah.
Now, when you grew up, were you in a creative home? Did you?
Nope.
No, your family didn't do crafts and projects and things like that?
No, my mother never did anything. Never. And that's why I thought I'm not creative. I cannot draw. I cannot do anything.
And in school, you were strictly academics and not anything art. Wow.
Yeah, it was all about math and numbers and taking care of people's monies and all that kind of stuff. And I never ever thought I would. But I remember as a child, I would like to be a teacher. I always liked to teach. And so I feel that I do understand beginners because I do went through the same route that they did. I do understand when people have a hard time with Photoshop. I do understand when they are struggling to get the pages where they are or their digital art. I just had a code session with a person that, she's got bit by the bug but is not a scrapbook and she wants to do more digital art and composite. And it is really refreshing to see the kind of questions that she was having. But I told her, she keeps saying, oh, I'm sorry to ask that. And I said, you don't have to say sorry because, it is like that. We need these questions in order to grow. Because if you don't have these questions, you're not going to grow as an artist. And I think also the second mistake is that I get this all the time. People say, oh, I'm not as creative as you. I cannot do an artsy page like you. I said, of course you can. Of course you can. I actually have that on my newsletter. Everyone is creative, but you have to be willing to play and to accept mistakes and be okay with it.
Yeah, I think that's true, that a lot of people come into any creative endeavor, no matter what it is, writing or painting or photography or scrapbooking or whatever it is. And they sometimes feel if they aren't really perfect very quickly, that there's not any point.
Exactly.
And I have that story in my family. My husband really was into woodworking, and he turned out things that I thought were really great for a beginner, but he just gave up because he said, well, I just don't do great things. And I kind of looked at him and said, yeah, but if you'd worked at this for 20 years, you might be turning out some magnificent stuff, because your beginner stuff looks pretty fantastic to me.
Right. And also, I think, especially in digital art, you have to practice a lot.
Yeah.
And you cannot compare, a person that is doing this for a while with a person that is not doing this for a while.
Yeah, because it's tricky, especially when there's complicated programs like Photoshop, right?
Yeah. But I think also what I see in digital art today is that people forget a lot about design as well, because I think people, they are so, I want to learn the technique. I want to learn the most technique. I want to learn all the tricks in Photoshop. And to me, really, I say to my students, and I say in my videos, if you want to learn a technique in Photoshop, you just go to YouTube. There's tons of it. Yeah. Tons of it. But what can you do with them? That's another thing. You can learn what they are teaching a specific project. But what I want for my students is not this. What I want from my students is, how can I take that and expand to what I want? Because that's when you start to create good art. Because just knowing tricks and have a plethora of like 50 tricks on your bag, it's not going to take you anywhere if you don't know how to put all these tricks and do a good thing that you feel good about it, and that you can, feel that you really are expanding your designs. And so I think I try to make that balance that, yes, I will teach you something more advanced, but also I want to teach you how to put this together, because otherwise it doesn't matter, right? Because we just accumulate tricks on our bag, but we don't know how to use them.
Right, because we want, what is your objective behind it? I mean, maybe it's a pretty picture, in which case you better know your principles of design, or you're trying to tell a story, in which case you better find techniques that could really express the emotion you're trying to talk about.
Exactly. You have to learn how, some of my layouts, for example, they don't have a lot of journaling, but I do use word art and words or color or things to show emotion on my pages. I have pages that talk about really, deep stuff. My son is an autistic individual. We are on an 8-year now journey, and it's been times that was really tough, and it's been times that are, not very pleasant. But there are also pages that I tell him, I'm a very, I said that I'm a very advocate person for my son. So I have pages for him that are saying to him, you just forget about other people. You just do what you want to do. Forget about that people keep saying to you that is not typical, So, you have to not be afraid to put these things out there. When I say that, does not mean that you have to show them online, but like to put them on a page for yourself, and to have the courage to do that. Because again, I believe in the work that comes after that is the relief that you have mentally when you put that stuff out for you.
Yes, therapy. And then there was something you said that I thought that was really good, is that, I think when you were saying what other people think, and it's trying to be judgmental about yourself. And,
Right.
that whole thing of not feeling like you're a great artist, but, you learn to maybe say what you want to say with the skills you have now, and then you work on them so that perhaps those, as you improve your skills, you maybe express it in a way that others can understand better, or may or may not be the same as everyone else. I always tell people who are saying, well, they can't draw. And I said, you draw things the way you see them. And I don't think that, really famous artists, don't draw just like everyone else. You're not going to get anywhere by being the same as everybody else. You can learn skills and then develop your own style.
Yeah, I love when I see people in my group that took my classes and they post pages that are totally different of my, of the project that I did. But I can see they use the techniques.
Right.
So it shows that it's that eye to say, okay, I don't have to do cookie cutter like she did. And that's okay. And that is absolutely fine if you're learning. And I've been to paper scrapbooking classes. I remember I went to a mini album class that everybody ended up with the same thing.
Yeah.
I felt mortified afterwards, but I understood the point. I needed at that time to follow step by step and to do the same book that the person that was a teacher was doing. I needed that. And I think what you don't have to be afraid is to let it go of that and put your own twist on things. And I think that's sometimes where we kind of feel afraid. And I think that we are very, very hard on ourselves. We have to have a little bit more compassion with ourselves.
Right. Be more forgiving. I think that applies to a lot of things, doesn't it?
100%. 100%.
With your psychology background, you can understand that because it causes people a lot of torment, I think, when they veer away from and say they have to be perfect in a certain way or.
Yes. And, I have some questions that I ask myself. When you think about something, if you say to yourself, I like to follow Byron Katie because I think she's a reflection of CBT, which I'm a fan of, which is cognitive behavior therapy.
And you're following who? I didn't quite catch that, Jana.
Byron Katie. So Byron Katie, for example, she teaches that if you have a thought process, for example, you say, I'm not creative. Oh, I cannot do this page. So you ask yourself, is that true? And you say, oh, yes, it's true. Is that 100% without a doubt true? And then you have to meditate on it. So, and then the other question is, how do you feel when you think and believe this thought that you're not creative? How do you feel about it? And these are things we have to ask ourselves every time we want to do anything creatively. In our case, we are talking about creativity, but, it applies to everything.
Right. And why do we believe what we initially say something, and then we have to examine it more closely?
Exactly. You have to reflect on it and see how would you feel if you didn't have that thought?
Right.
How would you feel different if you didn't think about, I would feel happy. I would make a page and be so happy with the whole process. Exactly.
Sort of scrapbooking as a metaphor for life. Or this kind of thinking.
Also, I can relate in the sense that although I drew artistic pages and I have an artsy style, I think also what I like to pass to people is that you don't have to think this is not also for scrapbookers, because I think there is a division here. I think some people think, artistic is just for, photo art or, composite, because they use stock photos and so on, right?
Yeah.
And then if you do scrapbooking, then you have to do, you use some paint and some things, but you cannot, it's not very family kind of page. And I think if people see my layouts, I think 80% of my layouts, they are with pictures of me and my son and, my family. There's just the three of us. I also started to, a time ago, actually, I had a column published at Somerset Magazine that was talking about this, being okay to talk about yourself and to artistic pages about yourself. So I take a lot of horrific pictures with my phone.
Horrific? Okay.
Yeah, selfies,
Okay.
me without makeup or sitting on the floor, whatever. But if you see the pages, you're not gonna think that the photo was like, there was stuff around me, and no, because in Photoshop and apps you can change everything. But the point is, don't feel that you have to put a makeup just to take a selfie and do a page about you.
Yeah.
If you want it to be artistic, if you're not doing a very simple layout. But my point to all this is that I think I can relate to people because I am also a scrapbooker, and I talk about my son. 80% of my pictures are about me and my life. And I use that in an artistic way. So you don't have to think that you just have to use, artistic photos or stock photos to create artsy layouts or artsy, art for yourself. You absolutely don't have to.
You can use regular pictures that you take yourself.
Yeah, because I think some people think I'm not gonna connect if I use a stock photo, and that can be right. But then they think, well, but I don't have pictures for that, or I cannot tell a story with a layout like that. But you can talk about all kinds of things in an artistic way.
Yeah.
And I always say, I remember when Debbie, I got a script, she used to have off hours in the membership, right? The critique. And I always like to put myself in the hot seat. And I used to say, okay, more depressing the story is, more colors I put on the layout.
The more depressing, the more colors. Yeah. Well, yeah. Now, you come from a very when I think of Brazil, I think of color. I don't know. That's like the first thing that comes to mind. Is that true?
Yeah. Think about carnival, all that kind of stuff.
Or just the color of things like jungle and beaches and rivers. And
yeah, makes sense. I never thought about that, but makes sense. Maybe there is something in my roots about that. I don't know. I just love to use color.
Uh-huh.
I really love my layouts to be very different. I don't like them to look the same.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I have a style, right? And some people told me that every time they see my layout, they know it's me.
Right.
So you do create a style, and as you grow with your art, you're gonna create a style. But what I mean is that I don't have the same look.
Yeah.
With the products, because I like to use different products. I like to mix products. So even though sometimes I work with designers, I mix a lot of the products.
Take from different designers and put them together, you mean?
But also when I'm working with one specific designer, if I'm using, I'm doing a project for them, I mix their products because sometimes you don't use old stuff. You just want to use the new stuff that they have.
Right. But you pull it all together, different older product and newer product, and just use that one designer, but use it in different ways.
That's the beauty of Gigi, right? We can go back and we can use things again. We kind of forget.
And in digital, we can recolor them so they can look, they can fit in better. And a lot of little techniques and tricks that can be taught that can help you put things together. And for people who aren't scrapbookers or digital scrapbookers, people create a line of products, of papers and different types of designs that you can, things that look like stickers, things that look like frames, things that look paper clips, whatever, and little buttons and beads, and pull those things in to accentuate the pictures and the story that you're telling. So, of course, there can be a whole suite of things that all go together, right. But then you pull in other things from that don't belong to that to make it look the way you want it to.
Yes, exactly, and that's why I decided to leave paper scrapbooking, and paper projects, I used to do, our journal pages or mini albums or this kind of paper approach, because I started to feel that as you get more creative, I started to feel that I wanted some things in my pages that our paper was not giving that to me. And I also, at the time, I lived in an apartment in New Jersey, and I really didn't have space to have 300 colors of paint or gessos or all kinds of these things. And later, where I would store my layouts, because I was having problem as it is with the huge, 5 albums that I have of paper scrapping. I remember when we moved here to Seattle, the moving guy was like, "Oh, what is this?" Well, I said, "Well, this is like photo albums." And he's like, "Wow, this is some kind of heavy photo albums," because of my paper, was my paper scrapbooking.
Paper is very heavy, yes.
Yeah, and I start to realize if I wanted to do the artistic pages that I wanted, my pages could not be stored anymore in albums. They would have to be stored in boxes. And that was a no option for me.
So you don't print your pages then?
I print, but when you print digital pages in albums, they don't get the same bulk that paper pages get. They're flat, right?
Yeah.
So, but nowadays, and actually that's what I like in my work, is that you can get so much realistic stuff with styles and things like that in digital, that we don't have that problem anymore, that it doesn't look, real.
Right.
I like that look.
Things can look very real.
Yeah. But I'm totally okay that my pages are digital and printed on a, photo paper.
Uh-huh.
And being a book, it's okay, because it's still very artsy to me. It's still giving me the results, and it gave me pleasure when I did that page. And I don't have to worry about having all the stuff that I used to have. So I gave all my stuff away, and I kept some very few things that I have here for painting. And even that now with my iPad Pro, I'm thinking to give it away, because I don't know what is to use a watercolor now for several months after I got my iPad Pro.
Right. Because you can do that with your iPad now.
Yeah, and I mean that everyone is different. And logistically for me, it doesn't give me the same pleasure anymore, because logistically for me, if I wanted to do watercolors, if I would have to come here where I am now on the second floor of my office, instead of being with my family downstairs.
Right.
And I don't want that anymore. So now if my husband want to watch something, I can just sit beside him with my iPad and do amazing watercolor now. So it's, now with the iPad, it really was a game changer.
Yeah, I haven't used my iPad enough. I mean, there is a photo, an Adobe product for that, and I have not yet explored working with it, and I keep meaning to, but I keep traveling. I don't have time to learn things right this minute, but that may be changing a bit. And I look at all my paper supplies. I'm sitting in my room here with tons and tons of paper supplies, and I do both digital and paper scrapbooking. So, but I don't do as much paper anymore. And I keep thinking, maybe some school would benefit more from this than I do.
Yes, I have a Cricut, and the poor thing is getting very dusty, but I still have it because, first of all, I don't want to have the work to sell, and, this is a huge machine.
Right.
But, sometimes when you still have young kids, when your son have, birthday, or it's like right now it's going to come Halloween, you do a little card, and you can, cut real fast on the Cricut and send some tags for them with some, something more personalized. And I can do that because my son, because he goes to special needs program, he doesn't have a lot of kids in the classroom, so it's easy for me than do like 30 kids.
That would be a bit much, even with a Cricut, to cut things out.
Yeah, so I my Cricut's still here, is gonna be here, but I think I diminish my paper or painting for, I think after the iPad, about 60 or 70%. because and it's so relaxing. It's so relaxing. And I think also a misconception and myth that people have is, and I had that when I was a paper. I was the kind of person, oh, it's not the same of a paper. I need to touch paper. And when I started, I think I learned today that it's not about the paper, but it's about what you're doing, in my opinion. So today I get the same pleasure and the same benefits mentally from working digitally than the paper brought it to me. And I think what we have to do is to be more open, not be so resistant, because I was resistant to change to digital. And I think we have misconceptions in our head, and we are afraid actually that we are going to feel okay with it. And
well, I approached it thinking Photoshop was going to be hard. And all it was learning a bit. I mean, taking a couple of classes and feeling all of a sudden it isn't that hard once you know, and learning new things is actually pretty simple once you've learned the basics. So,
right.
But I like to make my pages, I don't use a lot of the fantasy and blending and things because I tend to make more of my pages look more realistic. I kind of make my pages look like paper pages.
Yes, and there's people that love that, and that is okay because that makes you happy, then you have to go for it.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. But I have tried some of the more artsy things, and I think they're fun and interesting. And I've done it actually for art, to do photography art. But yeah, as far as when it comes to scrapbook pages, I still have my way of doing it that tends to make everything look realistic. But that's our style, right?
Right, and that's the beauty of it. The beauty of it in digital is that there's so many styles and there's so many ways you can do things.
Right.
And I always, when I'm posting something, or even for Get It Scrapped, I always say there in the group that this is my way of doing a page. This is the style that I love. If you want a more clean, you go to that place. But if you wanted to learn arts, and if you want to tell your stories, if you want to talk about yourself, if you want to, do things in an artsy way, colorful and like that. So yes, I'm here to help you 100%. If you want to do digital art, composite, whatever you want to do. But if you want to do clean, paper-like, you just have to look your tribe and find, people that can help you.
Yeah. And then learning the artsy techniques, you can learn also the things. They will help you in putting together even things that look more like a paper page. I mean, you can learn different types of things as far as shadowing and use of products that can. So in that way, it doesn't exclude you from doing that style, just learning some of these techniques by any means.
No, not at all. So the bottom line here, I think, is there is something for everyone in digital.
Yeah.
No matter what you like to do. If you just like to do, some people I follow on Instagram, they don't use even Photoshop. Their composites are just all made on the iPhone or iPad. They don't even use Photoshop, but they're doing digital art.
Right. And yeah, some of the pictures and things that people post on Instagram and Facebook are basically scrapbook pages, in my opinion.
Right.
You write a little story and you have a photo.
I don't know why scrapbook gets this name that people don't get it. They think it's like a bland. Like every time I say, what do you do? Well, I do digital arts scrapbooking, and I am an artist scrapbook. And they're like, scrapbook. And then when they see my picture, they're like, oh my God, what is this? And they think about, old ancient scrapbook, I think, when you talk about scrapbooking.
With the sticker sneeze on it or something. Instead of foreigners. Instead of things that are works of art, which they are. But I mean, everybody can be creative in their own way. But I always say doing a Facebook post is as far as I'm concerned, is digital scrapbooking. I mean, you have, and you even have, you have a date and journaling and a photo. There isn't much more you need. And if you make it a little artsy, you're really getting into scrapbooking. And if you're adding a little art into it, you're really getting into scrapbooking.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And also, I think the beauty of scrapbooking really is combining the art with your emotion, your stories, right?
Yeah.
Because every page that I make, it cannot have a full journaling, but I am passing an emotion, a story, what I want, to record. I don't know if my son is gonna care about it. He does love to see his albums, and he does love to see when I have them out, and he does love to see himself at my phone because I have thousands of pictures and videos of him. And so, but the main line for it is I'm doing for myself first. I don't have to do it to think about others. But I am giving him a choice that he can have that as he grows up,
Right.
and he becomes an adult. So, because I didn't have that choice. I didn't have that choice because my mother, unfortunately, um, destroyed after she divorced from my father. She destroyed many things,
Uh-huh.
pictures and things like
It was
that.
just too painful for her.
Yeah, but that's another thing. But
But it can be.
yeah, I didn't have that choice. I think
Uh-huh.
she made a selfish mistake, but I want to give that choice. If you want to don't want it, that's fine. But the beauty of it, it's all digital here. Here's your hard drive. You can take it, you
Right.
know? And
Yeah, well,
and
I
that's
think keeping our story, I mean, it can be really private in terms of journaling
yes.
and maybe, maybe you don't even want anyone to have that later, but
Mm,
that's just something I think it's just part of creativity. I think when we think about creativity, a lot of people think sometimes like drawing or painting, but it's also
mhm.
telling your story and your own private story, not necessarily writing great novels or anything.
Yeah, I do art journals, and I have art journal pages that have my drawings because I started some years ago to learn to draw faces, more not real faces, like whimsical faces. And I started to put that on my pages. I actually give sometimes in my newsletter some of these girls. Uh, and you can definitely also do hidden journaling in digital, because the
Right.
beauty of digital is like everything that you do on a page can have a hidden, subject that you don't have to talk directly, but you know what it means.
Or
But
you
you
can
can
write your journaling, keep it in your Photoshop document, and it won't be there in your JPEG because you'll have covered
Yes.
it up.
No, you can also put in your metadata, but
Uh-huh.
you can also hide in the page itself with blend modes and things like
Hmm.
that. But you can certainly put on the metadata, and it's there just if, a person's going to look on the metadata of the photo. But
Yeah, and for your own reference too.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I like this discussion about about creativity and your scrapbooking and your teaching. I was wondering, did you have any sort of general thoughts about creativity that you wanted to share?
I think that to be creative is about play and showing up yourself every day, or at least showing up and having a positive mind about it, not, you know, not taking yourself too seriously, and absolute don't compare yourself to others, because uh, you maybe be starting and you can't compare yourself to a person that is doing this for 10 years. I know it's hard. I do myself all the time, sometimes in other topics, but you will have to try to be really, to me, it's all about be playful and have a little bit more compassion with yourself, because everybody is creative. I 100% believe that.
Yeah, and you also and you think that it can be very helpful for our mind, which I completely
Yes,
agree.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. And I was so glad when my teacher in psychotherapy, talked about this in psychotherapy, because it's like, yes, it would be so nice if all these young people here would take a little bit of art and digital art and express themselves a little bit better, because I was very surprised at school, as an older person going back to school, that so many of these young people, so many of them already take so much medicine for anxiety and depression, and they really struggle. It is hard. And if you can find something that you can have an outlet like that, and it's very, very powerful. And it's amazing how just 5 minutes that you can sit and do this, it's 5 minutes that your brain is not thinking things that it should not.
So I think those are wise words to help everybody in, because life can be challenging at times. And there are some wonderful things about thinking about creativity that can be so helpful.
Yeah.
Well, I have greatly enjoyed this conversation with you, Jana.
Thank you so much.
I will, of course, list all the places that people can find you in the show notes. And so I think that you've had some really valuable insights into your creativity and how creativity can be helpful to other folks. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and if people want to join me on Facebook as well, I go live. I try to go live every Thursday. No, we cannot say like we go live because life happens, but I go live every week Thursday on my Facebook page with a tutorial. And right now, actually, I'm doing a series for people that wanted to transition from Photoshop Elements to the new Photoshop, because Photoshop just released a new CC 18, right?
Right.
And it's really amazing. Some change that they did was really, really wonderful. I'm so happy. And I didn't know that, but many people are telling me, oh, I actually have it, but I'm afraid to use it. And I'm like, no, don't do that. So I'm here to remove this fear. So
Good.
I started a series on my blog. I have not just the live videos, but I'm putting extra videos. But I'm live there every Thursday morning. And if you go to my Facebook, you just search Facebook 2 words. And you can, put a reminder there in the events, and Facebook is going to remind you, or you can sign up on my messenger there, and it's going to remind you.
Oh, great.
Well, yeah.
That sounds wonderful. Well, again, thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here with you, Karen, today.
Thank you for joining me at a Creative Approach podcast today. Show notes from today's episode, where you can learn more about my guest, Jana, are available on the webpage, www.acreativeapproachpodcast.com. You'll find links to our past shows with show notes for those episodes available there too. Also, please feel free to share your thoughts and comments with me on our Facebook group page. A Creative Approach podcast website is where you can see our affiliate links, and also you'll find a Patreon page with periodic stories from me and a place where you might choose to contribute to the show. Big thanks to my Patreon donors. I hope you are a subscriber to the show on your favorite platform, and please do leave a review on iTunes if you join us there. Thanks again for listening. I hope you will join in future conversations as we explore a creative approach.